In this video, there are certain students in the right side of the room, kind of in the back, that couldn't be shown on camera, so I stayed up at the front, which I wouldn't normally do. I'd normally be walking around while teaching, especially reading, doing classroom management stuff while I'm reading. But because of this, I'm up at the front. This is my first period class, and we were at the very end of the memoir, The Sunflower, for this class. The students have been really engaged in this book. It's really grabbed them, especially as they get more and more information about World War II within their classes. And in this clip, I was just asking them for a brief summary of what we had read the day before. And students were really good about giving a summary. I made a mental note of which students were actively participating, and I let about 4 or 5 students give a response to add to the summary of what had happened the day before when we were reading, and they all had a great memory and were excited that we only had about 7 or 8 pages left in the memoir, so they were very excited to see what was going to happen at the end, since we've been reading this memoir for a couple weeks now, so that's what was going on here.
Well, let's see if Gwyneth and Josie's predictions are right. We're on page 9.
After we finished the memoir, students were asked to complete a quick write just for about 10 minutes that asked for their thoughts about the end of the novel, and gave them a few questions to answer. And especially in first period, I have 2 ESL students, and so I always make sure to definitely help them along with the other students while I'm walking around, making sure that everyone's on task and needs any help with the writing. But I definitely make sure to go to this student and another student that was on the other side of the room, since they are ESL, and make sure that they completely understand the task at hand. Like I've said in many of my blog posts, I've really been working on a lot of this unit being very discussion-based, and students have gotten really great at not only being leaders in discussion, but actively participating, as well as responding to their peers and really listening to each other. And this first period class usually has the most problems with doing all of that, I think mostly just because it's first period and everyone's kind of sleepy and not always willing to speak up. But this day in particular was really great because the students that don't normally participate, once we got to the end of the novel and there were some big questions being answered and big questions being asked, it's kind of a what would you do type of novel. The students that normally sit in the back, just doodle, kind of don't really do anything during this period, were really, really into it and actively participating, feeding off of one another, kept raising their hands, had so much to say, and it was really great. So normally I would be responding more to each individual student, but in this case, we only had a couple minutes of class left, and all of these, mostly boys in the back, that just had so much to say, I just let them feed off of one another because they were answering each other and responding to one another in really, really smart, creative ways. And their abstract thinking skills were so much better than they have been throughout the rest of this unit. So I wanted to let them just keep on going and keep on responding to one another, which was really cool to see that they were so engaged. One thing that I wish I had done, the girl in the front who has had her hand raised, I was so engaged in listening to these boys in the back that I could have told her, I'll get you next or something, so she didn't have to keep raising her hand. She's the student that speaks the most in the class, so I wanted to give other kids a chance. She had spoken a lot that day, but I could have at least acknowledged that she was raising her hands and, did have something to say.
If you really wanted forgiveness, you wouldn't have waited until his deathbed to ask him for forgiveness.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have, what could he have done before then?
Overall, I was really happy with this lesson, especially being first period, since it's always really hard to actually get them engaged in a discussion because it is early and, first period's always a little bit rough. But they did so well with this, and their thinking, even just from the beginning of the memoir, has moved so much, and that was so obvious during this lesson. One thing I do wish that I had done at the very end was have more of a closure. I kind of lost track of time while listening to all of their thoughts and discussion, and so I really only had about 10 seconds at the end of class to kind of wrap it up and remind them of some due dates and things like that. So that's one thing I do need to continue working on, is not necessarily watching the clock throughout the entire class period, but making sure that I do leave time just for, 30 seconds, a minute of tying everything together, wrapping it up, and any reminders that need to be said. Just making time for all of that. But overall, I thought it went really well, and we'll see how it all progresses till the next video.